Hi everyone, welcome back to Literature Analysis Walkthrough. This is Lesson 5, your body paragraphs, your argument development. Okay, so if you're in grade 11, 12, or college or university, you've probably heard one of these three models for analysis. And this really is the basis for all analysis. Architecture, iPhone design, or camera design, or whatever it is. If you're going to analyze something, you have to do it this way. Tell, show, explain, point, evidence, explanation, or claim, evidence, analysis. I prefer tell, show, explain. That's what I'm going to use just because it's easier to say. It works at least two different levels. At the macro level, at the biggest level, your big tell, your big claim is your thesis. It's what you want to say, what you believe to be true about a text, and then you set out to prove it. And that's where your body paragraphs come in, which is what we're going to talk about now. That's a series of tell, show, explains. They're the smaller claims, the micro claims. You want to prove this, and you're going to walk the reader through your evidence. So you tell what you believe to be true about a particular piece of evidence, then you show it with the evidence, a quote probably, and then you explain that evidence. That's the most important thing. So let's have a look at how that works. Okay, so this is a micro tell. This is a micro claim that's being used to prove a grander claim. And the grand claim is this. This is the thesis of my essay. Through the use of three important symbols, the wand, the Dementors, and the Patronus spell, Rowling depicts the turbulent yet ultimately successful maturation and self-fulfillment of the young protagonist. That's the content, and the symbols are the form. This is what she wants to say, and this is how she says it through three symbols. So that's my grand claim. That's what I believe to be true. So in my paragraph 1, for example, I'll talk about the wand, and I'll use these links to do it. And my smaller claim is that the wand represents the self. That's what I believe to be true. Now, of course, in grade 5, you were told this. You said you were told that you have to prove something. Harry Potter is nice. And why do you believe that? Because he gives Ron candy. That's the tell in the show. So that's kind of the easy part. But as you'll see, we got to go even deeper when we're at your grade level. I believe that the wand represents the self. So now I have to go back into the text and find, well, where's the evidence for that? And you can feel it when you're reading a story or watching a movie or something. There are moments in your reading where something shines off the page. It's like you're getting hooked. You know that there's some significance here. It's almost like it starts to glow. It really is true when you feel something significant. Well, you should pause on that, or if you're reading with a book, you should underline that with your pencil or something and go back to it because you know that that's significant. So for me, it was when I was reading the section or rereading the section about the wand. It was like, wow, the whole page. There's like 2 or 3 pages there that just shines off the page for me, and I knew that there was something significant about that wand. So then I go back and I have to pick out particular details, and it was actually hard because there's so much good stuff in there. So one of the things I picked out was this. So when Harry enters the wand shop, the back of his neck prickled. Why A, why not B? Ask yourself that question about that particular fact. J.K. Rowling didn't have to include that. She could have said, he walked into the wand shop and he saw a lot of wands, but she didn't say that. She said the back of his neck prickled. So there's something significant about that. And if you ask this question, you'll get to some interesting answers. Another one was when Mr. Ollivander, the wand master, leans in to inspect him, Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. Same thing. Why A, why not B? Why this particular scene? It could have, Ollivander could have just said, hey, Harry, come and get your wand. But she didn't. She specifically used the word reflected. So let's see how that works in the explain section. Well, let's stay with the reflection thing. If you ask why A, why not B, you might get something like this. The image of the reflection clearly suggests an encounter with the self. How? Yeah, it's a mirror. And I'm going to show you a paragraph here and how you put all that stuff together. I'm going to show you a mirror in a second. But it's obviously a mirror. And what does the mirror mean? The mirror means you're looking at yourself. So that makes a lot of sense. The back of the neck prickled? What could the significance be about that? Why not just, he felt excited? You watch a hockey game or something like that, and you feel excited about something, but the back of his neck prickled. There's something else about that. Well, let's have a look. This intense, almost religious experience suggests a profound awakening. It is one of Harry's first intimations of the existence of his true self, which had been actively suppressed at Privet Drive. There's something almost divine about encountering something with yourself that you didn't know was there. There's something weird about it. There's something freaky about it. It's not just an excitement like a hockey game, although that's pretty intense too, the back of your neck prickled. So that's, in a nutshell, how you do the tell, show, explain stuff. Let's get a little bit deeper into some of those elements now. We already looked at the grand claim, the thesis of your essay, but when you're digging for other things to say about a text, when you're digging for evidence for your grand claim, when you're digging for things of significance that your teachers are asking you to pull out of the text, it's really useful to think of everything on the page, whether it's a poem or on the screen, if it's a movie. They're choices. There are hundreds and hundreds of small ethereal choices. That's the form. Okay, that's the form. And they're not there by accident. There are no accidents. So if you get in the habit of asking this question and this, you get to some interesting stuff. Why is it an apple, not a banana? Why is the sky compared to cellophane and not a swimming pool? There's everything is a choice. And if you start to ask this question, you might get to some interesting answers. Try finishing this sentence. The fact that it's an apple suggests what? What does an apple potentially mean? It means a lot of different things in Western culture. For example, it could mean health. It could mean good wishes if you're a teacher-student relationship. It could mean original sin if there's anything else that suggests the biblical context. If you force yourself to finish that statement about any particular detail, anything at all, what the character says, what color tie they're wearing. I'm exaggerating a bit here, but you see the point. It's very, very useful. A lot of professors don't like using this particular phrase in your essay because it's a bit clunky and wordy. I half agree with that, but I think it's not so bad. Okay, let's look at the show. Now, once you found your evidence and you determine that it is significant, but you're not quite sure what that significance is, try this. You read a poem, your teacher gives you a poem, and it's got an image of a sunny sky, it's got the image of some clean white snow, it's got an image of smiling friends, and it's got a nice smiling, whatever this is, snowman. You've got all those things. And now, of course, your job is to unpack all of those things. They're obviously symbols because it's a poem, and that's how poems work. That's how everything works, but poems particularly. So you've got the snow, and you're trying to figure out what snow means. You know that it's got to mean something. You know that it must mean something. Just like when we read this, it's like neck prickled. It's got to mean something, but I got to figure out what it is. Reflect it. It's got to mean something. So you run through your head a bunch of different things that it could mean, like we talked about with the apple. The apple could mean A, B, or C. Snow could symbolize death. It very, very often symbolizes death. And of course, when we watch a movie or read a book or whatever, we bring all of our past experiences with us. So it's a very good chance that if you're in university, you've read lots of literature and watched lots of movies in which snow represented death. So you got to test it. Maybe it does mean death. Maybe it doesn't. This is really handy. Once you establish that something is important, but not quite sure what, is it death or is it life? You do the evidence math. If you think it means death, go back into the text and look for other evidence that will help you nail down what that one might mean. If you've got a poem whereby you've got these nice pleasant images, there's a very good chance that snow doesn't mean death. It actually means youth, innocence, and purity. Now, there could be irony involved there, and it could mean death, but you've got to do the evidence math with the irony. You got to indicate that, oh, this is ironic, and this is ironic. You add all that irony math together, and you get death. So you got to be careful with this stuff. But finding evidence for your evidence, do you see what I mean, is really useful. One more thing about show. So once you've dug through the ethereal choices and you've found some good pieces of evidence, you've thought carefully about what that evidence might mean. Now you're ready to put it on the page, but don't forget a few things. As you're writing it on the page, don't forget to set up the location in the text. And I talked about this in my overview video. You've got a poem, begins and ends. You got a movie, begins and ends. Set up the quote by locating where it comes at the beginning. So towards the middle of the play, by chapter 5 or whatever. The second thing you have to set up is the narrative situational context. Don't just say, in chapter 5, Harry says this. No. In chapter 5, when Harry's talking to Ron about, whatever, he says this, and then you explain it, okay? At the cafe, after the party, these kinds of things. And again, if you go back to my overview my overview video, I walk through some of these things and how to set things up. Okay, now let's look at the most important thing, which is the explain. Your teachers may or may not have given you a word list of analysis vocabulary. You can't survive university without it. Whether you're analyzing an automobile design or a poem, you need analysis vocabulary. So screenshot this and the next page, and you'll find them very, very useful. Let me just show you how the form fits together with the content. Let's say you're seeing violent line breaks in a poem. It's an author's choice. They chose not to have be, which is long, flowy sentences or lines. They chose to break those lines in a very violent way. Well, what could it mean? It could convey the passion of the lovers. And again, how do you know that that's true? If that's your initial, yeah, that seems to be the case. If that's what your first instinct is telling you that's what it means, then do what we talked about up here, piece it together with other pieces of evidence, and then you're on pretty solid ground, which is exactly what scientists do. Cool, eh? Another example, the symbol of the green apple is associated with the character's untrustworthiness. Same kind of thing. You see the green apple on the page, you ask yourself, why is it green? Why isn't it red? Why is there a little hole in it? Why is there a worm in it? A green apple with a worm in it? What is it associated with? And your assumption is, well, it seems to be associated with the character's untrustworthiness. Then you go back into the rest of the poem or the play or whatever it is you're talking about. You slot it in with other pieces of evidence, and you come out with a pretty convincing. That's what you're looking. You're trying to convince your teacher that I'm correct, and it's convincing. Okay, now let's break it all. Let's put it all together and then break it all down. I'm going to read this with you, and you're going to see how it all fits together, and I'm going to show you all the little devices that you need to use. Early in the novel, Harry is taken to Ollivander's shop to receive his magic wand. The wand is a symbol of Harry's true identity, the self that has been oppressed by life at the Dursleys. Significantly, when Harry first enters the wand shop, the back of his neck prickled. This intense experience connotes a profound, almost religious awakening, Harry coming into contact with his true self for the first time. This awakening is further suggested when Mr. Ollivander, the wand master, leans in to inspect him, and Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. An encounter with the mirror, an image of self-reflection and discovery, is the real reason Harry is brought to the shop. The wise old wand master guides the callow youth to his wand, and Harry leaves with important new information about who he is and what he can be. Now let's unpack that. So right at the beginning here, you see the context providing by the essay writer. The essay writer locates the reader in the frame of the work, the beginning, middle, or end, and then provides some situational context. What are they talking about and where are they? Then you go straight into your claim. This is what I believe to be true. And keep it simple, keep it straight, but don't be afraid to elaborate a little bit on it. If you only said the wand is a symbol of Harry's true identity, it's boring, it's bad writing. You want to flesh out what you mean by true identity, or a bit more of the significance of his true identity in the context of this particular novel. After your tell, you put in your show. Now, you don't always have to do this. I should mention here that this TSE is not always religiously followed. Once you get the hang of it, you got to get the hang of it, so master it now. Keep yourself really strictly into this format. But once you get better at it, you'll start to realize that it's quite limiting, and if you just keep doing it like this, it's very mechanical and actually kind of boring, and very often not necessary, as you'll see. Okay, but I have my evidence in here, the back of his neck prickled, and now I dig into the blue. Remember that phrase, dig into the blue. I got my evidence. I know, I'm pretty confident that it means something. Now dig into it and pull out a phrase or a word or an image or whatever it is, and then hold that image up and analyze that image. What could it mean? So again, the prickling suggests the religious stuff. Now this on its own might not be enough proof, because somebody could say, well, what do you mean prickling? Religious. Maybe he's itchy. If you don't leave yourself open to counter arguments. So that's why we put it together with another piece of evidence. And that's what we have here. The reflection. I got a nice piece of blue, a nice piece of evidence, and you dig into that evidence and you say, what in here suggests something important? And of course the reflection suggests the mirror, and that's what I choose to analyze for this last part here. Okay, so this one fairly follows the pattern quite nicely. A nice big tell at the beginning, followed by show, explain, show, explain. Now, there are other ways to do it as well. And in the second part of this lesson, I'll do a separate video on it. I'm going to walk you through an entire essay. It's about 800 words. It's a good essay, and it's got all the mechanics that you need to follow. But as you'll see, it doesn't always follow the tell, show, explain thing. As you'll see, this particular paragraph, it starts off tell, show, explain, tell, show. And as you'll see when we read it, you don't really need the explain because it's self-explanatory, but be careful of that. Don't do that. Always go, for now, always make sure you can master the tell, show, explain part. All right, that's it for that video. Thanks for watching.